Hey everyone, Steve here from PC Budget Solutions, and I have a video, this video coming today, and I did it for a couple reasons. I get a lot of people that talk about the systems I sell that they may not be the best price. And a lot of it has to do with the fact that I sell more new systems than used systems, and people sell used parts and used systems for less than less than what they would cost new, obviously, but often you can get a better system for a lot less than a new system. Case in point, there's somebody selling a Ryzen 5 GTX 1070 16 gig RAM SSD for like $700. Like, I can't compete with that, but that's because somebody's getting out of gaming and selling their computer. Same thing with graphics cards. There's a GTX 1060 for sale. Now it's for sale for $120, but they usually sell for like $180 used. But I picked up a GTX 970 for, I think it was like $120, and I have an RX 570. You can buy one for $130 right now. So I basically picked up two cards, and the 970 normally sells between like $110 and $140, and the RX 570 has been selling between like $130 and $150. Very much they overlap. So we want to see that if, in this case, new versus used, is the 970 going to edge out the 570? Probably. But if it does, how much? And is it worth giving up the 2 to 3 year warranty that you get with it, plus some better optimizations? It's not going to be end of life sooner, etc. So let me show you guys the test bench. I'm doing a little bit different this time. I'm trying to remove some bottlenecks, but not being unrealistic for the kind of system you expect to put one of these graphics cards in. Now here we have the test bench. One thing you guys should all know about me is I try to do real world testing, but I also try to remove as much bottlenecking as humanly possible. So I grabbed the CPU. It's an i5 6600K. It's overclocked to 4.1 gigahertz, 1.3 volts on a deep cooled GMX 400. The reason why I did is because that's the auto overclock on the MSI Z 170 PC mate board that I had, and that's a one-click overclock. Should be stable. It's not dialed in perfectly, but it's relatively stable. It's something that the average person might mess with. Then we have 16 gigs of DDR4 memory. XMP only puts it at 2400 megahertz. We are comparing the Power Color RX 570 versus the MSI GTX 970 Twin Frozer. We're using an XFX XTR 750 watt 80 plus gold power supply, a Kingston A400 SSD with 240 gig of RAM just for the OS, and the external 500 gig Samsung SSD. Now, let's take a look at the testing conditions, because that's very important for this test. So in this particular test, we're using two monitors. Primary display is 1080p. Secondary display is 1600 by 1200. I have 4 Chrome tabs open, the usual LTT, Halo 3 theme on loop, PCBudgetSolutions.com, and the WoW forums. And then the programs I've opened is Hardware Monitor, CPU-Z, GPU-Z, MSI Afterburner with temp and power targets max for both systems, and Discord open but not logged in. So my standard test bench, essentially, or standard testing conditions, to say the least. Now here we go with 3D Mark Firestrike, and to be honest, I actually did not expect to see a decisive win by the RX 570. I felt that it was going to compete very gamely against the GTX 970, but synthetics do favor newer architectures and newer designs, and it can stretch the legs of newer hardware differently than what we see in games. But that is exactly why we take a look at games. So, without further ado, let's look at games. This is a little bit more of what I've been looking for. So, Ghost Recon Wildlands, 1080p high settings, both of them averaged over 60 FPS. Not a shocker there. The GTX 970 with only 3.5 gigabytes of VRAM, if you remember the whole scandal with that, did edge out the RX 570 a little bit, but this is kind of the testing that I was really expecting to see. Let's go ahead and take a look at For Honor next. Another subtle win. This is 1080p extreme settings, and again, we really shouldn't have much of a CPU bottleneck given the 4.1 gigahertz overclock. I said much, not I eliminated it completely. But anyway, the 970 does edge out. The VRAM limitation doesn't seem to be apparent here. It doesn't win out by huge, about 5%, but that's kind of what I was expecting. But wait, there is more. And next is GTA 5. And here we're stretching out a little bit further. We're about 6.5 FPS. That comes into about 6% that the GTX 970 did win out over the RX 570. However, we have seen in the past that the CPU is by far the biggest player in this particular test of GTA 5, with the GPU just being an ancillary product in the grand scheme of things. But we have 2 more tests to look at. Now, here was a pretty decisive victory. Most of the test results you've seen have been slightly above margin of error, and when I do run these tests, I do often run them 2 or 3 times just to make sure that I'm getting consistent results. Here was definitely a decisive win. Just under 8 FPS, so 7.9 FPS. But when we're looking at around 80 and 90 FPS, we're just shy of the 10% mark, so about 8 to 9% margin of win here. However, Final Fantasy is running cleanup crew today. Let's take a look and see how that ended up. And I saved this one for last because this really showed some differences here. So when you look at it, we're looking at a 550 point differential between the 2 GPUs. That comes out to over 10%. We're around the 12, 14% margin of win. Obviously goes to the GTX 970 in this case, but there's a little bit more to the story. Let's look at the bigger picture, and then we'll get the final thoughts and why we did this video. So looking at the overall performance, we see that in games, the GTX 970 edged out by just under 8%. Overall, it was actually exactly 2%. Part of the reason why is because the RX 570 actually won the synthetic test, at least one of them. Realistically, though, these cards are probably not 8%. They're probably between 3 and 5% different. The reason why is I only tested, 3 or 4 actual titles in this game, and there are many titles out there that favor AMD versus NVIDIA. It depends on developers and how they develop, and are they developing more on one platform versus another, driver optimizations, etc. So the too long didn't read is they're both very close, but let's wrap up and let's talk about the entire point of the video, and then we'll see you in the next one. So what was the point of this video? To get views. No, I'm kidding. Obviously, I would love it to get views, but that's not the main point. I did this video because almost all the time, in fact, 95+% of the time, you get a better value for something that's a year or 2 old that's used versus buying something that's brand new. With all the mining crazes, messing with the GPU market, buying a new GPU in 2018 wasn't realistic. Now, that being said, AMD is this close from launching a new series of GPUs at the mid-range, like the $200 to maybe $400 range. And we're hopefully going to hear about it in the next couple months. So we're seeing GPUs go at really low prices. RX 570 is as low as $130. RX 580 8 gig is as low as like $180, $190. And they're competing, like the 570 beats the 1050 Ti. And it sort of competes with the 1063 gig, and the 580 trades blows with 1066 gig depending on which game you're playing, right? So this is really about, if you need a graphics card, my friend's actually in this exact same scenario right now. Do you go with a used 970 for really good value, less than $150? You can find them most places used for that price. Or do you buy yourself an RX 570, which at the time of this film is coming in with 2 new games. You have a choice of the 3 out of the Division 2, the Devil May Cry 5, and Resident Evil 2. They're like redoing it, and those are AAA titles that are coming out in February and March. And so you get 2 of those with this card. So if those are games you're going to buy right out the gate, they're $60 games. You basically got the card for $30. Me, not interested, but some of you guys might be. So that was the purpose of the video. In this scenario, Steve from PC Budget Solutions recommends buying an RX 570 over a used 970. Unless that 970 is less than $100, then to me it might make sense. But nothing, in my opinion, really gives up, better power draw because it only uses an 8-pin versus an 8 and a 6. And the warranty at least 2 years, whereas buying a used card, even EVGA, the warranty is most likely going to be up on a 1070 at this point. So that's what the point of the video was. I recommend the 570 in this scenario. If you like this video, hit that button. My like-dislike ratio has been great lately, so if you hit this button, I want to know why. And I'm not going to say don't troll me. If you're going to troll me, you're going to troll me. It is what it is. But I legitimately want to grow this channel out, so give me good feedback. You guys have seen I've taken it before. Want to buy anything from the test system, description below. But as always, this is Steve from PC Budget Solutions, and I'll see you all later on down the road.